Hey there guys, this is Hendrick Tallardar, and today I'm joined by Alliance Tournament 12 commentator Apothne. And today we'll be talking about what the Alliance Tournament is from a first-time viewer's perspective. So Apothne, what is the Alliance Tournament and how does it work?
So the Alliance Tournament is a fantastic annual tournament where CCP allows all the different alliances in New Eden to come together and battle out for some really cool prizes in a specific tournament setup. This isn't one of your giant blobfest where all the subcaps in the game are given a certain amount of points. You're allowed 100 points on your team, and once you have gone up to that 100 points, you can have no more ships. Typically that puts us in a 12v12 setup, and whoever is last man standing on the field wins the match.
There are a lot of different slang terms used throughout the tournament that you'll hear and you'll probably see reference on the streams. Now, these can include newts, damps, lodging, and stuff like that. So, Apothne, let's go over a lot of the more common terms and what they mean and how they affect the match.
Okay, so a lot of the slang terms are to do with electronic warfare, E-war for short, in-game. These are generally split up into tackle and more commonly referred to E-war. So different tackle modules are things like warp disruptors, called points, warp scramblers, shortened to scrams, and stasis webifiers, shortened to webs. A point just means that a ship cannot warp. Entirely useless in the Alliance tournament because you're not allowed to warp off-grid anyway. Warp scramblers, however, they don't have the same range as a long point, but they will turn off MWDs and they will stop micro jump drives activating. So they are a very good way to control the movements of your opponent, to stop them running away from you or to stop them getting somewhere to get in range to shoot you.
Okay, and stuff like stasis webifiers and what do those do?
Okay, so stasis webifiers, or webs for short, they give a base penalty to the speed of my opponent's ship. So, for example, a regular stasis webifier is a slow of 60%. So if I chuck a stasis webifier on my enemy's ship, he suddenly loses 60% of his max speed.
And what is an MWD?
So an MWD is one of the propulsion modules in the game. There are a couple different ones. There are micro warp dives, shortened to MWDs. They give you a large boost to speed whilst increasing your signature radius. You have afterburners, which give you a small increase to speed, however cannot be turned off by warp scramblers and do not increase the signature radius of your ship. And you have micro jump drives, which come in large and medium sizes and mean that battleships and battle cruisers, respectively, can spool it up for 7 seconds and they will jump 100 kilometers forward to the way they were facing.
There's also terms such as newts and damps. What are those referring to? Because those are different than scrams and points, correct?
Yeah, so those are our more typical E-war. So the first one to consider is damps. These are generally the most popular E-war in the Alliance tournament. They're very popular in game as well because they're just that good. So the long name of them is remote sensor dampeners, and they perform 2 different jobs. The first job they perform is that they decrease the maximum lock range of your opponent's ship. The second use is that they decrease the scan resolution of your opponent's ship, which means that it takes them longer to lock certain targets. If you do not have a script in your remote sensor dampener, then they will perform both jobs. If you have a specific script, they will perform one job twice as well.
And the script is the ammo for a dampener?
Yes. So we can imagine if we were in a comp that wants to engage at long range, if our enemy makes the decision to fit remote sensor dampeners, they could fit the targeting range scripts and suddenly we have to come in closer to actually shoot at them into the range they want to engage at. One of the key points to remember in the Alliance tournament is that all comps have a range they want to engage at. And whoever can dictate the tempo and the range of the engagement is usually the team that is going to win, which is exactly why sensor damps are so powerful.
And the Alliance tournament takes place in a very confined space as opposed to a normal in-game fight.
Yes. So the other forms of E-war, the next most popular would be ECM, known as in their long form as electronic countermeasures. They are similar to remote sensor dampeners in that they affect the locking of your opponent's ship. However, If you ECM someone, they can no longer lock targets. Their current target locks are broken, and they cannot make any new ones for a small amount of time. However, you might say, hey, these are way more powerful than Dance, why would anyone bother to use Dance? ECM is based on a random number generator. You have a percentage chance to jam your opponent. Remote sensor dampeners will always have an effect. ECM is either it will work or it won't work. It's a binary situation, whereas with Dance you have optimals and you have fall-offs, so they'll always work for you to some extent.
And then there's also things called vampires, and what do those do?
So, vampires and newts are very similar types of E-Wars. So, in EVE Online, each ship has a capacitor, and most modules require some capacitor to use. Energy neutralizers are E-War modules that will remove capacitor from your opponent's ship. Vampires will remove the capacitor from your opponent's ship, and it will give some capacitor to you as well. Typically, newts will remove more capacitor because they don't have the added bonus of giving them to you, and some ships have a bonus to the vampire to make them more effective so you get more cap. So capacitor warfare is a very, very strong way to deal with, example for enemy logistics, because using repair modules requires a lot of capacitor. So the final E-War module is known as a TD, or a tracking disruptor. What they do is they, similar to sensor damps, have two functions. They will either decrease the optimal projection range of your turret, or they will reduce the tracking of your turret. They have scripts as well, so they'll do both jobs with no script. With an optimal range script, they'll be twice as effective reducing the optimal of your turret. With the tracking speed script, they'll be twice as effective removing the tracking of your turret.
Moving on from there, you also have things called Logi that do reps and other things along those lines. What are those referring to?
Okay, so you are allowed one Logi boat in your AT setup, and logistics are just the healers of EVE Online. They have remote repair modules and also local repair modules, which they can use to repair the armor or shield of your comp. Typically, you will either stick to a full shield tank or a full armor tank, and you have a logistics boat dedicated to which tank type that is. And as enemy DPS comes in, you can rep against it. And a lot of target calling for the AT that the fleet commander of each AT team has to do is choosing what ships he thinks he can break the tank of. So that's ships he thinks he will be able to kill despite the enemy logistics. Sometimes that means shooting the enemy logistics to get it off field, so there are no more reps.
You had mentioned earlier that there are two different ship types, shield and armor, and discussing how the Logi behave and what they do. What are the differences between the two of them, and why is one type more favorable than the other in a situation?
Shield versus armor is a decision that has permeated EVE Online since its inception. Each have their own advantages and disadvantages, and each need to be used for different circumstances. Typically speaking, shield ships, because their tank is based on mid-slot modules, aren't able to fit as much tackle, or as many tracking computers, for example. This means that they have plenty of lows for extra damage modules, however, and speed modules. Armor ships are the inverse. Armor plates that give you more HP slow you down. You've got to fill up all your lows with tanking modules rather than damage modules. However, that frees up your mids for more E-War, for more tackle.
One thing when watching the Alliance tournament is they'll spend a long time discussing potential fittings that a ship is using. What are they referring to in that regard?
So, each hull that you buy in EVE Online does not come with any modules as standard. You, as a group, have to decide what modules you want to put on each ship. Do you want really big guns? Do you want lots of E-War? Do you want lots of tank? Each module has a requirement for power grid and CPU. Each ship only has so much power grid and CPU. So each ship can't do everything. You've got to make a decision on what you want the emphasis on your ship's ability to be.
This has been a very brief overview of what the Alliance tournament is like, especially for a first-time viewer. Apothne, I want to thank you for stopping by and, giving your insight and helping explain things to the new players out there for EVE Online and the first-time viewers for the Alliance tournament this year. And for more videos, hit subscribe below.